Greetings. So how do we do this? Okay. Yes, that's the okay. So I think most of people, everybody's online.
Hello.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello, good afternoon, colleagues.
Good
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Oswald.
Oh, great. How are you, Alessandra?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks.
Sorry.
Great. All right. Oswald, did you see my email today about this other?
I saw that there was an email from you, but I haven't had the chance to
Open it. Okay, and I was asking if you could get directly in touch with the people for tomorrow's seminar, tomorrow's workshop, because they didn't answer apart from David. So I wanted to be sure that they are aware of the time and Zoom link.
Okay, I'll follow up after this
You
session.
can, yeah, if you can do it. Thanks.
Okay.
Alejandro, can you hear me? Christine, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Great. Good afternoon. Good to see you. So, as
Me and Christine, we are in the same room, so there might be at times some echo. Let us know because we are trying to use each our own computer. But if it creates any trouble, let us know.
Okay, will do. Okay, like previously agreed, we have 12 to 15 minutes each.
Ton micro est coupé.
And from our lineup, well, let me just welcome everybody, at least those who are here. Welcome to this panel. This is a panel on, sorry, let me just
Can you speak again, Ike? We can't hear it again. We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, now it works. Okay, great.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. So I was saying we have, as agreed, I was just trying to also from those who are present here physically and those who are logged in online. This is our panel on homegrown platforms, looking at the global south. So I'm going to welcome Christine. You go first. Yeah.
I don't get good sound.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hear me?
I hear you, Christine, but I don't hear the people at the venue as well.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Should I share my PowerPoint?
Yes, please.
Okay. Est-ce que tu vois? Okay. Sorry, it seems that the PowerPoint doesn't open properly. can you see the PowerPoint now? Yes?
Yes, yes, we see it.
The full screen.
Full screen. Okay.
There is a problem in putting the full screen, but worst case scenario, you can watch it like that.
In my case, it's full screen.
Not here, but it looks like it's seems like it.
Okay.
Still the same.
The same.
Wait, it was coming.
This one is full screen?
Nope.
No? Okay. I don't know what to do. Here? Is it full screen? No?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
How-
perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, and I'm very sorry for for this technical issue. Thank you very much, Ike, and good afternoon, everyone. I will present today on streaming Bollywood in South Africa, the case of Z localization and collaboration with African players. In September 2023, the Indian media company Z Entertainment launched Z Zonke in South Africa, a channel with program exclusively in Izulu, one of South Africa's 12 official languages. And with a mix of Bollywood film and entertainment show, the creation of this channel is emphasizing the recent turn of this Indian media company toward an hyper-local strategy. This initiative also goes along with other channels recently created, the IM in Amharic or Ethiopia in 2013, and launch of Z Dunia in Swahili just a few months ago. So based on the case study of Z Entertainment, this presentation proposed to discuss the transnational expansion of audiovisual players in South Africa and the evolution of partnership between Indian and African players. So just a few words on how I came to this topic. So for the past 8 years, I've been working on streaming platform in India, looking both homegrown and international platforms. And in 2023, as part of the international research network South Stream, I started to study the transnational expansion of Indian streaming and digital players with this exploratory fieldwork in South Africa. One of the main objectives of this work is to contribute to recent researches on the expansion strategy of global visual company in the African continent in a context where the literature has remained largely focused on players from North America and Europe, particularly Netflix and Amazon in Anglophone countries, Canal Plus or Orange for the Francophone ones. Research also have been expanding on the development of Chinese media and audiovisual players in Africa. But Indian players remain less studied in this case, despite a long history of Bollywood circulation in the continent, especially in Nigeria and South Africa. And this work also aspired to contribute to research on South-South cultural flows and their transformation in the streaming area. Associating political economy of communication and socioeconomic approach of cultural industry, this paper will present the first result of fieldworks conducted both in Johannesburg and Cape Town in 2023 and 24. My methodology here combines document analysis, ethnographic approach with a series of interviews with industry professionals and different professionals from the sector, Indian and South African companies, as well as observation material from industry meeting. I will first briefly come back on Bollywood shaping its market in Africa, South Africa, then analyze more precisely the localization strategy, and finally discuss the place of Bollywood for South African audiovisual players. So one precision to start with. Here by Bollywood, I will be referring to movies and series made in Hindi language by the industry film based in Mumbai, formerly Bombay. But there is a larger diversity of Indian content coming from other regional industry to which I will also refer to, including Tamil or Telugu film. So historically, the circulation of Bollywood content to overseas market has been mainly organized around the South Asian diaspora, in particular by TV broadcasters and film agents. However, Bollywood also widely circulated through piracy channels, making it available in almost all hubs across Africa and Middle East, reaching also a large non-diasporic community. This development paved the way for the long-term appreciation of Bollywood content in Africa. As Brian Larkin also analyzed in his famous paper on Indian film in North Nigeria, the narrative tension of Indian film has been particularly relevant to OSA viewers, offering images of parallel modernity to the West. South Africa has been a significant export country for Bollywood, in particular due to its large South Asian population. The programming of Indian film, first by two main South African distributors in their multiplexes, and on the other hand, with the arrival of satellite channels broadcasting Bollywood, have been particularly important to a move from ghetto to mainstream, to quote Asina Ibrahim, making Indian film more accessible beyond the diasporic audience. Today in South Africa, Indian content is distributed by a diversity of audiovisual players, Indian historical broadcaster, South African broadcaster, and the big US streaming platform who acquired and produced original Indian content for their catalog as part of their global expansion strategy. So the focus came on Zee Entertainment Company because it is the only Indian audiovisual company, who has opened a local office in South Africa and built a long-term investment in the country and more broadly in the sub-Saharan continent. So the launch of Zee was back in 1994 in India in the context of the deregulation of the media sector. And Zee rapidly expanded globally with a presence in almost 40 countries in the years 2000 and with a diversity of channels. Zee Africa opened its office in Johannesburg in 1996. And to enter this new market, the company established strategic partnership with MultiChoice, the largest South African distribution company, which is available also in some other 46 countries in Africa. And the two main channels in South Africa are Zee World and Zee Zonke, who are available on MultiChoice Associated Service, DSTV. Zee also tied partnership with a dozen of other broadcasters present in Africa, including Canal+, StarTime, Zaku TV, or K24. To assert its status of global players, the company made major evolution in its localization strategy, as the CEO of Zee Entertainment has been explaining. At the early stage, the approach was to cater to the Indian diaspora in Indian language. Then the company realized that Indian diaspora living in foreign market were changing. They were more fluent in the local language than in Indian language that most of them don't speak anymore. Hence, the approach evolved to cater to Indian diaspora in foreign language. For example, in English for the UK and US, and in Arabic in Middle East. Today, our content is Indian, but we have an international audience speaking local languages. Africa has become a focal point of what we call the hyper-local strategy, which is one step deeper than traditional generic language of English or French. In all other regions, we are so far in the second phase. It's only in Africa that we've got into this third phase with the example of the two first channels that I mentioned at the beginning, and of course with the case of Zizonke. So coming to the catalog strategy, a first observation is that the strategy of this company is not based on massive purchase of local content and investment in the production of original, as we could see was a characteristic of US platforms such as Netflix or Amazon. It has been also a very expensive strategy, and it's important to notice that they're currently experimenting scaling back and decrease in budget for purchasing an original. So Z rather focused on dubbing content from its vast library, backed up by a dynamic production of original content in India. The Africa team select and curate them for local channel, benefiting also from the audience expertise and feedback of its local partner. A second important aspect is the adaptation of its original format, both scripted and non-scripted, in different countries. So the company is basically selling scripts rights for adaptation and can participate in the co-production of the adapted version with local partners. This experiment started in the MENA region, but have been also expanded in other countries. So in 2020, Deceptive Measures was the first Nigerian adaptation of the soap opera Pavitra Chitra, with popular actors from Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. It was produced in collaboration with the Nigerian agency Mace Entertainment and moved this 100 episode soap opera into a 52 episode series. Another adaptation was the Z indie series Karina Karina, made in Rwanda in Kinyarwanda language under the title Kaliza wa Kaliza and broadcasted on Zaku TV in 2024. Z has been also adapted non-scripted IP, and as most famous one, Dance India Dance, that became Dance Ninja Dance, that was launched in 2022 and reached its third season this year. So the last point I wanted to emphasize for this part was actually the limited place given to the streaming platform in this process, to Z5, as part of this expansion in South Africa. More broadly, the African market has very little accessibility to its streaming platform compared to Asia Pacific region, for instance. So in a context where content is still reaching a larger audience on TV than on smartphone, it seemed that this strategy has been to remain rather with multi-choice network and satellite distribution rather than investing in its digital platform.
Christine,
Finally,
you have to round up now, please.
The last section, briefly question to what extent Bollywood content has been also fitting into the strategy of South African audiovisual players in a context of interest for internationalization of catalog, but also budget constraints.
Christine.
So taking the example of the national public broadcaster, SABC, a responsible from the acquisition team explained that Bollywood was first started on ACB3 back in 2004. For a long time, it was out of its programming and came back only in recent years. One of the aim was to bring the Indian community back on the channel, but not only the specifically Indian audience, as the responsible explain, all the demographic watch the movie as long as they get subtitled or dubbed. She also
Christine, you have to
explained
round
that
up
her
now,
team
please.
asked their Indian suppliers to put the emphasis on a diversity of language and a balance between Tamil and Hindi movies. And finally, she also explained that ACBC was also testing Turkish novellas with success on its channel, and they were also looking at getting more telenovelas from Brazil. So furthering this discussion with an Indian syndicate expert in Africa. This professional depicted a complex local and regional industry situation for Bollywood, with, on the one hand, an increasing competition with foreign content, and on the other hand, lower budget also that tend to push down the price of Indian series they were selling. She also mentioned a recent regulation across countries that foster local broadcaster to buy more local content. But with a certain lack of financial backup, local broadcasters are also struggling, a situation that could explain the success of script being sold and adapted, as in the case of Z.
Hi, Christine.
So to conclude
you need
this
to round
first
up.
finding with the case study, it shows that the expansion strategy of this company relies more on collaboration with long-term partner and a preference for distribution via TV and satellite services rather than developing an autonomous streaming platform. Hence, this exploratory research highlights how also historical media structure persist and adapt, may be contrary to the idea that streaming platform represent a revolution in the process.
Hi, Christine. You need to round
Thank you
up.
very much.
Oh.
I hope you could hear properly.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Aha, okay, because I was calling out to you to round up. You didn't seem to hear me. Okay, good. So we'll take questions at the end. Let's take the other presentations now.
Okay.
So let me invite Alessandro.
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So I'll also try to share my screen with you. Please let me know if it works.
Yes, we can see it full screen.
You see it full screen?
No. You need to put it on full screen. Yes, now we see full screen.
Now is it? Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, so it's a pleasure to be here, and even if I would have loved to be there with you, and it's an irony that I'm talking about failures today, as my trip was indeed a failure, as I didn't manage to cross the border into Nigeria. Anyway, this is a story that is only for those who already know. I will not spend time explaining what happened. Anyway. So maybe, I don't know if Ike told you at the beginning of the panel that this is indeed sort of a collective work that we are doing as part of this ERN project that Christine in particular is coordinating, which looks at South-South, the platforms, digital platforms in the South-South ecosystem, and particularly for this panel on platforms, homegrown platforms and foreign platforms adapting to African context. So my research here starts from basically the assumption that there is indeed a growing literature about this, which has emerged over the past few years, and most of you in the room and around the table online are aware of this literature. And my feeling is that this literature is somehow marked by a paradox, because indeed it recognizes and it acknowledges the fact that there is more and more involvement and investment in the expansion of both global and local platforms in Africa in terms of film and media distribution. But on the other side, there are elements from both empirical research and larger economic or industry research that show that the performance of these platforms remain relatively poor. There is, in most cases, evidence of the fact that these platforms are hardly economically viable. I could mention here a paper, very interesting paper by Simon, a Nigerian scholar based in Australia, who speaks about an economy of hope to talk about particularly homegrown platforms in Nigeria, which are sort of connected to still a very much a sort of informal economy that make them work in a way, but still within a system that is not economically viable. Within this large landscape of literature, my feeling is that there is, despite the evidence from the field of the large number of failures, indeed, of trajectories of companies and platforms that appeared and also disappeared pretty rapidly or less rapidly, we will see that in a moment. The issue itself of failure is hardly explicitly analyzed. So my intention in this paper, which is very much a work in progress as this is developing into a proper paper for the special issue we are working on together, is to look at failure as a central object of my analysis and try to take this entry point in order to see what failure can tell us about platform economy in Africa. Failure has indeed received scholarly attention, but most of all in general studies about platform, and most of all Western platforms, in that literature that is coming more maybe from management studies perspective and look at startups, economies, and see within that type of economies indeed failure as a central component. But my intention here is less to do a I might say flat, straightforward, pragmatic analysis of what are the factors that provoked failure, but rather I would take failure as a sort of theoretical concept in a sense to think about critically about the expansion of platform economy in the continent. And I take here particularly the suggestion by Vicky Mayer, a media scholar, among the proponents of production studies as an approach that suggested indeed failure, and quoting Judith Alberstam, is an interesting object to look at, to also think and analyze forms of resistance that emerge from the field, which are resistance that are not inevitably, if you want, politicized, are not consciously political in a sense, but nevertheless they suggest as a form of resistance of an environment to a certain type of transformation. Those of you here that are familiar with the literature about platforms, and particularly in Africa and in general about digital innovation, are probably well aware of the fact that there has been a lot of optimism since, or I would say at least 15 years now, even more, on the impact of new technologies on African communication practices and the economy, and also political dynamics. There's an entire literature about the impact, for instance, of social media on democracy. There is, of course, a literature on the potential impact of digitalization in the development of African cinema. And this literature, in what concerns cinema and media in particular, insists on two aspects, two potential benefits that digital transformation can bring to film, which is one, disintermediation, which basically means the fact that by using digital platform, one can cut and avoid the old intermediaries, classic intermediaries of media distribution, big broadcasters or film distributors and so on and so forth. And on the other side, which would mean, by the way, also that in a way there is easier access from the producer to monetization. The producer can more easily monetize and control the money that comes from its production. And on the other side, long tail distribution, what does it mean is basically the idea that in a context, the context of African cinema, and here I'm thinking more about other African cinema rather than Nollywood, is the idea that for a cinema that has always struggled with distribution, because it's always been seen a bit of a more of an elitist cinema, a niche product, digital distribution help profiting for distribution for longer term, because films can remain in catalogs online for a longer term and be discovered by niche audiences that otherwise would have been would have had a difficult access to this product. Sorry, no, it doesn't work any longer. Huh? Oh yes, sorry, yeah, I had to reshare the thing. Okay, is it full screen again? It's coming, huh? Yes. So these promises of digital distribution somehow didn't manifest themselves, or not entirely, in the sense that what we witnessed in many cases is rather a very strong centralization and verticalization of process of distribution. So rather than process of disintermediation, we assisted, particularly with the arrival of big international companies, to forms of monopolization of the control, which in a way added layers of intermediation. And I will get back to this in a moment with a telling example. And then on the other side, even the issue of long tail sort of revealed itself not to be that realistic, as even whenever these big platforms put African films in their catalog, they are lost in the multitude of the catalog and the offer, so they become hardly discoverable, and in a way they are as impossible to find as they used to be before the introduction of platforms. So my study here focused on a number of particularly telling failures. In the paper, I focus particularly on 6, which I divide in 2 groups. One first group, which is mostly concerned with initiatives that were also supported by public money, in particular European and American sort of development money, and which were active in the late 2000s and throughout the 2010s. The literature about these platforms, I find it interesting, is very, very limited, even if they have been sort of precursors of the platformization of African cinema. And then in a moment, the second group of platforms I look at are platforms that are completely market oriented and are owned by private companies. I will not go into the details of the itinerary of each platforms because we don't have the time for that, but just a few elements. Africa Film TV is considered to be probably the first largest initiative, even if chronologically Buni TV is older. Africa Film TV was heavily funded by the European cooperation through the ACP program, ACP Culture, and it tried to develop a system with its own app, its own program to indeed distribute African cinema and popular cinema at the Pan-African level. It was initially mostly focused on Francophone African cinema and series, and later expanded by connecting with Buni TV. Nevertheless, I will not go into details, but its economic model failed, and only 4 years after launching, the platform shut down. Then we have Mokolo, which was sorry, there is a mistake in the in the PowerPoint. It's not 2028, but of course 2018, the year in which the platform sort of shut down. This was mostly a professional platform, so it was oriented toward the creation of a network of professionals sharing information and connecting together. But it was supposed to also have a part of its media environment dedicated to distribution, which I think never really existed. Some friends in Lagos collaborated with that, but I don't think they are in the room now, like Doreen Ajao. Anyway, what happened is that it was also heavily dependent on public money, both related to the Goethe Institute and European money. And by 2018, money dried up and didn't find a way to survive. And Buni TV is the most ambiguous in this landscape because it was very much related to also a sort of private investment type of logics, but nevertheless managed to exist most of all thanks to money from Ford Foundation and later also from the European Union. Here, the type of failure is different and it requires some specific clarification. I call it failure because the platform at the end was sold to Trace TV. So from many point of view, this would not be called a failure because most startups, this is what they have as an objective, to be sold to a bigger group. But it could be considered as a failure if we consider that in this whole debate, the idea of platformization and the emergence of African platform for distribution is the idea of gaining back a form of sovereignty over distribution. While here, what happened is that Buni TV was sold to an international French-owned and later Swedish-owned group. Anyway, and Laura Mungai, the owner and initiator of this initiative herself, in a recent interview, say basically that there is a very big problem in distribution. And if she was to start this initiative today, she would definitely avoid doing the same thing. And she would strongly discourage anyone who wants to try to create a platform in Africa today to engage in this.
You need to round up, Alessandro. You need to round up.
All right, sorry, it took too long. Anyway, let me go quick through the private groups. I had a focus on Mnet African Film Library, which is very interesting because it's slightly different. Was trying to build a catalog of author African film, but shut down without particular explicit reason in 2013. Then we have Iroko TV, which would deserve an entire presentation by itself, which somehow disappeared or closed down in 2024. And an example related to Amazon that arrived in Nigeria in particular and in South Africa, investing significantly in film production, but terminated its activities in production only 2 years after. So my point here is to try to say that there is a conjuncture of a double volatility in producing these failures. On the one hand, is the specific volatility of the platform economy. I don't have the time to go into details here, but the literature about platform economy suggests that this is a particularly volatile economy. And when we apply this volatility to a context that has specific infrastructural challenges like the African one, as suggested here, and Nigeria could be the specific case studies for me, as I know the context better, and is particularly volatile in both economic terms as infrastructural terms. The combination of these volatilities sort of create a particular obstacles for platforms to develop. So my point here is that there is a form of resistance in a sense that is interesting to think about the existing African economic and infrastructural environment to the development and application of platform economy. And I take here Jean-François Bayard's point as a sort of suggestion, the fact that we need to think not much about how Africa has been co-opted, colonized by this global capitalist project, but rather how what is most salient about the experience of Africa and the world over the past 2 centuries is how, in a way, it managed to always find alternatives. Of course, talking about Africa here sounds very general, but even if we go to very specific examples and take Nigeria as an example, we see trajectories by which the country, in a way, develop situated alternatives. So my point here would be to focus on these specificities of local vernacularization of this platform economy. And my closing example would have been on YouTube, which I don't have the time to do, but YouTube offer an interesting case studies to look at how platform economy is localized, but still with a question mark. I mean, we see how YouTube is really becoming a central vector for the distribution of Nigerian films in particular. But despite these, and despite the fact that in a way YouTube offers a solution to many of the questions that the failure of other platforms indicated, the fact of because it offers content for free, because it helps in fact disintermediate distribution, it still remain a system of distribution that introduced several limitations to creators. And my main point is about the system of revenue sharing in YouTube, which sort of drive creators to self-orientalize themselves, since the most important revenues come from countries which highest RPM, that is highest advertising money, basically. So creators need to focus these markets, basically the West, in order to monetize better, which push them to self-orientalize themselves. I'm sorry because I had to rush the end of my presentation. I hope that I managed to make most of my point clear, and I stop here. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Alessandro. Quite clear indeed. Well, we turn now to Oswald, who is presenting a paper on local is lekker, Netflix alternatives and local content production contraflows. Oswald, please go ahead.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and
As
clear.
I'm trying to share my screen.
Oops.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm
Sorry,
co-presenting.
can you put it on full screen?
Okay, let me see. Everything seems very cluttered, and
Well, if you can't, don't worry, just go ahead.
I can't find some of the options because they are hidden by the
Okay.
Zoom screen. Okay, there we go.
Fantastic.
Okay, so as you have introduced me, my name is Oswald Dureke, and I'll be joined in this presentation by my colleague also from the University of Johannesburg. His name is Adams Mtuta, and I've seen him lurking on the platform. I hope when his turn comes, he can be heard. So in this presentation, which is also part of the special issue that Alessandro is editing, we use the case of Viusasa, which is a Kenyan streaming platform, to examine how local or homegrown video on demand platforms exploit but also contradict the global Netflix template in curating local content. So other examples, just to name a few of these local or homegrown platforms, would include the likes of Showmax and SABC Plus in South Africa. Of course, there are many other examples from around the continent. So our central argument in this talk is that these alternative streaming platforms invigorate grassroots production and encourage a distinct institutional or production logic. And when we talk about a production logic, what we mean in filmmaking terms is the organizing principles and decision-making that informs film production, such that there are ways that become part and parcel or tried and tested, or part of the tried and tested formula of some industries, which become integral to how they function. And we think the institutional logics of these homegrown localized streaming platforms have not been given the scholarly attention that they deserve. So we will give a cursory view of the types of content and associated production cultures that this platform views as motivates. And in the process, we are proposing that Viusasa and indeed other homegrown platforms are doing what we would call an Africanized contraflow to the global North enterprises such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, which have their own production canons that these homegrown platforms differ from. And by contraflow, what we mean is the flow of cultural content from the global South to the rest of the world, in contradiction to the established flow of content from the global North to the South that we are used to. And key to this view of contraflow is that homegrown streaming platforms, which are growing parallel to global ones, offer unique distribution opportunities to local film content. So you hear us also talking about issues to do with production, because in recent times, streaming platforms have been venturing into the production of original content, both transnational streaming platforms and these homegrown platforms that we are focusing on. And then why are we calling them local or national when we are talking about streaming, which in essence reaches everyone across the world? So in our definition of these platforms as local or national or regional, we use Croft's differentiation of national original cinema as that cinema which differs or struggles against and tries to beat Hollywood at its game. So likewise, we view these platforms as both competing and complementing Netflix and other established platforms. But as they are doing that, they are using the model that these global platforms are using. So we feel that the homegrown platforms fill gaps where certain content is omitted by the big transnational platforms, because they are operating from a different commissioning logic. So, for example, Alexia Smith in 2023 noted that Netflix content commissioning in South Africa focused on Black women leads and creators. And then Showmax, trying to fill that gap, designed its own niche that was targeted at particular South African audience groups. So this is what inspires our argument that these local players have different institutional logics as their point of departure from merely replicating the more culturally detached aspirations of global players such as Netflix. So I will invite my colleague Adams to come in with a bit more context about ViewSasa, and then I will wrap up talking about how this constitutes this idea of contraflows that I've explained. Adams, if you can come through, please.
Yes, indeed, Professor Osel and colleagues. Thank you so much. And I will start discussion of ViewSasa. Now, the story of ViewSasa starts in 17 June 2015. And this is when Kenya government mandated the switch from analog to digital broadcasting. But this mandate happened with some kind of contradiction, because the government was a bit impatient. And so it started by raiding the media stations who were originally transmitting in analog. And one case that was actually mentioned was of the way the government destroyed the transmission infrastructure of several mainstream local broadcasting stations. So in 2015, then it appeared to be the moment when it became clear not only to the local media players, but also to the international media companies, that the government was very decisive in changing the way the content was being consumed. It is important to note that before this time, Kenya was mainly using terrestrial broadcasting infrastructure. And so the quality and also the capital investment and the mode of access to the content was basically free. People will not subscribe to content because there was nothing to subscribe to. However, we have what I am terming a major jolt from 2015. And this actually happened because the government invited companies to diversify in terms of content production. And here we have change from the free way of accessing content to subscription-based content. So what happened is we have 4 kind of interventions which accompany this transition. And I want to mention them because they were very key to the formation of ViewSasa. The first of these was the requirement for broadcasting infrastructure to be based on digital broadcasting platforms. But remember, at this time, we did not have this infrastructure at hand. So what happened is that the government then invited private companies to supply the infrastructure, to supply also the gadgets, the digital decoders, so that the customers can buy and be able to access the signal. So among the companies which took on this task, we have a company which was called Pan-African Network Group. This is a Chinese company, and it started supplying not only the digital decoders, but also they had their own platform for content that can be accessed through these decoders. At the same time, we have other companies coming in, including local companies who are not really a major player in this kind of transition. So noteworthy is that the change from analog to digital means that the monopoly of transmission was now being transferred to foreign players. Number two, we also had the need for new content optimized for these platforms. So, like I mentioned, in 2015, many people were accessing their television free of charge through the analog based platforms. So here we have the need to create content that can be streamed through the digital platform. And this means that local media companies and also foreign media companies, they have to come up with their own content. Locally, we have the main media houses, including Kenya Television Network. We have another one called Nation Television, and we have another one called Citizen Television. All of these companies, they started generating their own content. The third note for the kind of intervention was that the country's broadcasting attracted also another broadcast model, the streaming or online streaming, which came alongside the digital decoding model. Here we have independent players, including media companies and also telecommunication companies joining to offer internet-based content, which can be accessed through streaming and subscription. And
Sorry.
the fourth intervention.
Oswald and Adams, you need to begin to round up, please.
All right, thank you. And so the fourth intervention that happened is that when the international players came on board, we also have other kind of initiatives that disrupted the industry. Now, these players included Netflix, which was already getting after, thereby becoming a major competitor to the local media players. The same case was for Showmax. And this is where Viusasa comes in. So Viusasa was a platform that was created by a Kenyan mainstream media company, Citizen Television, and it was as a way of countering the effect of Showmax and effect of Netflix, and also the effect of the digital companies, foreign digital companies, which were providing the subscription services. So Viusasa comes to us as a challenge of the foreignization of the local media content. It promised to bring or to retain the original content that is natively accessible through the analog kind of medium. However, it also found another kind of competition, and this is from the telecommunication companies. Mainly, we have a company called Safaricom, which controls majority of telecommunication services, and it has ventured into internet streaming services. So Viusasa then integrated not only the internet streaming services, but also some kind of the Netflix and Showmax models into this kind of enterprise. And so my colleagues, I want to invite my co-presenter to conclude on the control flow and institutional logic.
Yeah, I'll try to speed through this because we are clearly out of time. But while we are viewing ViewSASA as contraflow is because it can be considered an enclave of difference and resistance, like Alessandro has pointed out before, resistance to the ubiquitous presence of transnational VOD platforms, and that its content is undergirded by production of locality, being local subjects, local national situations, and the making of everyday space and everyday experience. And the instances of vernacular creativity on ViewSASA are characterized by aesthetics and storylines that may not fit the production canons of transnational VOD platforms. So we feel that ViewSASA motivates new or unique production cultures that are shaped by local contexts of production. And in a way, even though Netflix foray into African continent and its focus on strong Black leads and Made in Africa initiatives initially introduced African content onto the global screen, there was this concern that these global tech firms were gatekeeping content such that they were now the ones that would determine the kinds of material that represent the international front of African film, and in turn how they shape ideas about what African cinema is. In essence, acting as taste makers. So when ViewSASA and other platforms like it plug into vernacular creativity and aesthetics, local organic locations and local traditions and local language, we submit that it institutionalizes contraflow strategies to outcompete these transnational VOD platforms like Netflix. There is a lot more to say, but I think we will stop here in the interest of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, we're not quite a large audience here to clap. We should clap. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us we should clap. We didn't clap for the other people. So thank you for that reminder. We've not been clapping. Okay, great. Well, it turns to me, unfolding this last presentation. And my presentation is on the impact of platformization on the development of the Nigerian music industry. I'm going to build very much on the foundation already laid by Christine and Alessandro on platformization and what our research group is working on. But just to emphasize that this idea that the research on digital platforms has largely been constructed from the perspective of North American and European actors. And so what we're trying to do is, well, take a look at things from the global south. Okay, you've noticed that all the presentations here have been that platformization, the incorporation of digital platforms into various facets of media production and distribution, it has transformed the Nigerian creative economy. And we see there have been various references, especially in Alessandro's presentation, to the Nigerian film industry. So this is also the case with the music industry, particularly with reference to Afrobeats. Okay, two of the country's most significant cultural experts. And they have embraced platforms such as YouTube, Netflix, Boomplay, and Spotify. But the question is, how has this had an impact on the industries, both the film and the music one? The focus here is the music industry. What I have used as a framework is the matrix of power. The matrix of power, of course, is not a single, widely recognized theory, but it combines various perspectives into the same framework. But key aspects here are intersectionality, the multiple forms of oppression, which this framework refers to, structural and institutional power, the fact that power operates through institutions, policies, and social norms, and also the relational dynamics. Okay, the power relationships. Power relationships are dynamic, with individuals, groups influencing and resisting each other. The method I have used is a qualitative one, consisting of interviews and a focus group discussion. The people I discussed with are people in the industry, including the founder of We Talk Sound, a creative agency and distribution platform, an artist and repertoire manager, the former executive of Boomplay and the founder of Amelia Songs Forever, the business developer for Nooks Recording and the founder of Goya Distribution, and the music strategist and talent manager who used to be the president of Aristocrat Music. So these are the people who contributed largely to the findings that I had. One key thing that stood out that digital platforms have transformed music distribution within the country, but have not necessarily led to greater prosperity for artists. The various points which I will list out. The first one, the impact of digital platforms on distribution, music distribution. Okay, one of the things that the respondents emphasize is that digital platforms provide data-driven decisions and enable independent artists to find their audience, so on and so forth. However, the fact that the gatekeeping has been virtually eliminated means that the lower barrier to entry has led to market saturation and issues of quality control. And then also the algorithms play a significant role in content discovery. And this could be disadvantageous to the artist in the sense that, well, what do the algorithms do? They show us or bring to us what they think is our taste already, things we are already used to, but they don't show to us new people who are coming into the scene, people who could be considered as niche, for instance. They don't present that. So algorithms could be disadvantageous to the artists. The other key finding here has to do with streaming revenues and market dynamics. And I think that this ties into something that Alessandro was also talking about. The impact of the revenue streams. So part of the failure really is in this space of the revenues. Artists now have multiple revenue streams beyond streaming. Yes, that is the case. But then streaming revenue in Nigeria, this relates concretely to what Alexandra spoke about, that streaming revenue in Nigeria is significantly lower compared to Western markets. For instance, the example that my respondents gave me, they said 20,000 streams in Canada leads to a revenue of $42. Whereas it takes 317,000 streams in Nigeria to earn the same amount, okay? Which, of course, there's a huge difference. And this arises from infrastructural deficiencies, that the subscription rates here in Nigeria is lower due to internet inaccessibility and economic limitations, that people cannot afford the subscriptions. And so the subscription here in Nigeria is much lower than in these other parts. Spotify Premium Individual, for instance, costs $9 US, 23 cents in Canada, while here in Nigeria at 1,300 Naira is 84 cents. So clearly, it's not a market that you will say they would want to invest in. And we have seen many of these companies, especially the film platforms, pulling back because they don't really see what they stand to gain in this sense. As a consequence, distribution companies struggle with recouping advances due to low streaming revenue. And of course, there are the technical and infrastructural challenges, including payment systems. And we see how the different platforms, how they interrelate, because due to the fact that the payments platforms here are problematic, so they are not able to, you could say, handle the payments from Spotify to the artists here, there are problems. So the telcos, there are problems in that interrelationship. So that also leads to disadvantage for the artists here. Then we turn to the local platforms, local versus global streaming platforms. There have been various attempts to set up local platforms, such as Bedu and Just Play, and there are a few others, but the economics has not worked out. And once again, back to what Alessandro spoke about, the failure rate. So local streaming platforms face significant challenges in competing with global platforms. Funding is a major one, is a major issue, and is key in this power dynamics that we spoke about. The market dynamics favor global platforms due to the economics of scale. So local platforms cannot afford to pay for content to pay for collections from other people. I mean, to buy the licenses. They can't. So it means that the range of their content is extremely limited, and you cannot attract audiences with a limited range, as it were. So it then leads to platforms for visibility and metrics, and this regularly impacts the local platforms. Then another point in terms of the interrelation between platforms is, and then also the point of maybe linking to what Oswald spoke about, how people, you could say, fight back, in quotes. The use that has been made of TikTok. TikTok's role in music marketing, that the platform has become essential for gaining attention in a saturated market. So artists now try to engineer virality through TikTok, dance challenges, and things like that. And the platform also helps to revive old catalogs. However, viral CK's 2019 hit, Love Quantity, has the greatest, I think, number of streams. It has close to 1 billion streams. But then 6 years down the line, he's not very visible. He's not very visible in the space. You hear of Davido, you hear of this other guy, but CK is almost nowhere to be found. So even though TikTok helps, but it doesn't lead to a final thing. I mean, it doesn't lead to full stability. Then just to conclude, sorry, I've rushed through this a bit, so we have a bit of time for discussion. Then, as stated, looked at from the perspective of the matrix of power, we can speak about oppression that derives from economic limitations, that platformization can and does worsen existing inequalities in that sense. There are also the power imbalances, that the platforms often prioritize corporate interests over user well-being, which further perpetuates this power imbalances. Of course, they have to meet their bottom line, and that will always be the preference. Algorithms do not necessarily favor new artists. No, they want you to continue listening, and they follow. And thirdly, that at the same time, there's a resistance and activism in that users can challenge platform power dynamics through advocacy, protests, and alternative platforms to drive virality and consequently gain more streams. Okay, I rest my case on that one. Thank you. Right, that was a bit rushed, but just so we have a bit of time for discussion. So now we have heard 4 presentations. We had the presentation of Christine, who spoke about streaming Bollywood in South Africa, the case of Z's localization and collaborations with African players. We had Alessandro, who spoke about when platforms fail, pitfalls. And we also listened to Oswald and Adams. Local is Leka, Netflix alternatives and local content production contraflows, and myself with the impact of platformization on Nigeria's music industry. So the floor is open for questions, both online and physical. You have a question, please. Maybe you can come a bit closer to use the microphone.
If possible, to introduce yourself so that we can.
Okay, also introduce yourself, please.
In the literature department.
Can you hear?
Not
No.
much. Sorry.
I'll send that to you. Dramatic. Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Much better.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much for these papers. Hello, my name's Susanna Seth. I'm in literature at Howard University, and I'm interested in similar questions around platforms, but more focused on literary performance and drama. And I was really interested, Professor, I think you put it so succinctly that platformization can and does exacerbate power imbalances. That was wonderful. And I'm wondering, I would love to hear a little bit more about whether and how we see similar patterns in the so-called homegrown platforms that are being held up as counterexamples, or if there is something really different there. Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all.
Well, if I may, before I throw it to my co-panelists, if you notice in the presentation, because while Alessandra and Oswald were talking, for instance, I was saying exactly, this is echoing things that I have come across. Okay, so when I throw it to you, you heard Susan's question. She would like to see, are there similarities across these different fields, these different spaces, and these challenges that we have touched in here?
Sorry, Ike, this is more for Oswald and Adams, right?
No, for all of us.
Local
She's asking,
platforms, so for all of us,
generally,
okay.
from the work that
I
we
think
have done so far, what have we seen in terms of these similarities across board?
I tell the question to Christine because she didn't get it a second.
If I can come in first, you hear me, Ikechukwu?
Please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, in my view, I think all of us have used this common word of resistance, in the sense that what homegrown platforms are doing is to beat transnational VOD platforms at their game, so to speak. So they may be using the same model, but then they are adapting this model to local contexts. And in the case of ViewSasa that we presented on, the fact that they now bring local languages and they are portraying local spaces and other instances of vernacular creativity sort of represents this resistance and this, what can I say, this independence from the hegemony of international platforms. So in a sense, you can say that they are resisting the international platforms in that they are finding their own unique niche, their own localized content, and their own niche audiences, in spite of the fact that they are using the same model that the international players are using. That's the response that I can hazard.
If I may jump in, first
Yes,
of all, I
please.
would say that probably Robin, in the next panel that follows up on the same, will have further answers on this because her case studies look also at a very hyper-local platform, which is indeed working on a different model in many ways. So it's an interesting case studies, I guess, to answer to this question. But from my point of view, I could answer maybe through the example of Iroko that many of you here know. And I would say that it's an interesting case because in a way it shows on the one hand how there is never a definitive answer to a question of this kind. Like an actor could at the beginning position itself as a alternative, a counter-hegemonic, contra-flow, whatever you want to call it. But then at one point it could also switch to another position or be perceived as occupying a different position. So Iroko at the beginning very much marketed itself and was perceived even locally as a positive alternative, but pretty quickly he entered in conflict with local marketers and more was perceived by marketers as basically monopolizing the local market. And this translated in the fact that he stopped acquiring content from the marketers. He began producing in-house precisely because he was no longer in positive terms with the marketers. And anyway, it's just to make a general point. I think that all these platforms can move and shift through different positions, and I think it would be hard to position them only on a good side or sort of bad side. And these shifting power dynamics that Ike in particular was talking about, I think are animate or exist throughout the whole field of or the ecosystem of platforms, and they're constantly shifting, constantly dynamic.
Fantastic. Christine, you want to add something?
I can, yes, sure. I had a few words. So from what I understood, sorry, with the distance, I hope I got your question correctly. I understood that it was also how local platform are intertwined into logic of powers. What I would maybe add to, because I totally agree with the two previous answers on this, maybe the fact that it's local, there is a huge diversity of what can be a homegrown or local platform. In a way, it can go from a platform backed up by a very powerful audiovisual company or a telecom company, or to be indeed more the alternative type where we were mentioning. So the kind of catalog backup can be extremely different. So behind the term homegrown, there is a huge diversity of economic backup, which is one type of power relation. And I would add on this of capacity to handle technological also challenges, because today for the smallest platform, the challenge is to catch up with technology, algorithm, digital services basically that make the platform works, perform, and also reach audience. So there is also that question of imbalance in the capacity to handle the weight of the technological services maybe here. And I think one aspect that you highlighted, Ike, is also this scale economy. Some homegrown platform have the capacity to develop this scale economy and have regional expansion, when some others, it's not even their aim to have at all a regional expansion. They're looking at maybe niche audience. And so they are also experimenting another type of revenue model. So that's just some element to add to the discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christine. Any other questions?
Yes.
I hope it answered the question.
Did we answer your question? Great. Okay, we have another question from Daryl.
Well, I have comments for almost everyone. I like Suzanne's question. Can you hear me?
Introduce yourself. Sorry,
Okay.
because of.
Yes, following Suzanne's question and some of the feedback, that came from it, I just started thinking, are customers resisting or trying to thrive or just to feed their consumption habits? Are the locals, those people who are creating alternative platforms, are they resisting chasing customization, or is just a race to get a slice of the market share? No, I meant commercialization. Are they resisting or chasing commercialization? Is it just a race to get a slice of the market share? Look at what Bisuswa, what's that one he did? Biusasa is trying to do. I had to quickly check it online, and I started wondering, does it exist? Okay, yes, I found it exists. Does it have traction? What's the subscription model compared to available alternatives? We have already seen from your research that people are looking for cheaper alternatives for media stuff to consume. So does it work for them? Is there a strong emotional reason, for which you can use to push for national adoption? So that's something you can use to market the Viusasa. So that's just thinking on that. And I didn't really get a lot from Christine. I liked the analysis of the Bollywood streaming, but I didn't understand the problem she was trying to solve. For Alessandro, I liked that he tried to define why platform fails, while the different platforms have been failing. I liked the double volatility page, even though he ran through it very quickly. Okay. And then you've already raised the diversity in YouTube payments. Is there a recommendation for Tobiaya? what are your recommendations? You did not give recommendations after your presentation. I'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Right, if I just go first, this is still work in progress, so it's not finished. And so the key recommendation that will come into play here is one I think that everybody will have, the policymaker. Okay, the policymaker has to step in terms of building infrastructure, in terms of greater access to funding. Okay, these are two key things that I think, because if this the question you asked about, is it a desire to get a share of the market, or is it really resistance? I don't think you can separate both, because it may not be active resistance in that sense, but in terms of trying to put forward their own culture, in terms of trying to put forward their own platforms, which is not controlled. The president, not to be dominating in that sense. But let me throw the ball back to you guys. You had Beryl's questions to you or comments to you. Kristen, did you get Beryl's question? She addressed the question to you. Kristen, Beryl was trying to understand.
Yes, I can hear.
Exactly.
Thank you. So
Okay.
I understood, just to precise what was the problem I was looking for in the presentation, right? Okay. So maybe just to contextualize the origin of the research. So I was interested into looking at the expansion of Indian streaming platform at an international scale. And so interestingly, I didn't find so much of Indian platform streamers expanding their activity. And instead of this, I found that some of the important Indian audiovisual players still prefer to have their content circulating through satellites and through partnership with local broadcasters than having their own streaming platform. So I wouldn't say it could go into the discussion about failure, because in a way the research didn't totally show that there was an important expansion of Indian platform, especially in South Africa. I found 3 examples of other platforms, but their activity is extremely limited. And that's why I didn't go into details on those other platforms. One is EOS Now and the other is Ngama. But what I found more interesting to question here was, so first, against the idea of revolution, both by platform in the circulation of content, here we see that instead it's more the in a way traditional media road which are used still to circulate content. And the other aspect, the other question was on the strategy of partnership with local player, how to produce content, how maybe the demand into streaming platform changed the partnership to produce content. And so that's what I looked a bit more with the script adaptation. But it's very much a work in progress right now. So that were some of the 2 main aspects I was searching in this work.
Thank you, Christy. Alessandro, you heard Beryl's question?
Sorry, I'm afraid I didn't understand, because at one point the sound was cut when the person was speaking. I'm sorry. So if you can tell me what the questions were for me?
Okay, well, okay. She wanted something about recommendations. What are you recommending? Okay.
Well, it's hard to recommend anything in, the scope of the research is not maybe large enough to have comprehensive recommendation. But what is interesting for me is that and the interest for me of studying these failures is that it seems to exist since now, I would say 15 years, a gap between the discourse about new technologies in this industry in particular, but I would say even generally, and the reality of it. And it's interesting for me that despite the fact that we have seen this for so many years, still there is a sort of cyclic system dynamic here. Every next year, someone will come in and say, okay, the future of film in Africa is digital, and put a lot of money in it, or push foundations or whatever to fund with millions another project, which somehow end up failing. So I think that, well, particularly for Nigeria, for sure, the infrastructural dimension is central, as you were saying, Ike. And if you look at the trajectory of Iroko, that is really central. The cost of running the company in Nigeria was so high, and it's still so high, the cost of consuming content online for users, that it doesn't match. Because if you implant yourself in an African country, your running costs will be higher, but your audience will be lower, because as a matter of fact, for now, there is not a significant or critical mass of people who would consume your content online, unless it is free, like on YouTube, and is possibly short. So it's also interesting to see that for ages there has been this idea of short contents as the solution, and until very recently, all the companies that tried short content also failed. But I have been aware of a very recent development of very short drama apps that have become extremely popular in Nigeria and other African countries, mostly with Chinese content, actually, which is, to me, is interesting for both the fact that these are Chinese contents, and I'm interested in South and dimension, but also because it seemed to work for the first time in a concrete and, significant way. But it's interesting because these are content that are serialized, so it's not the same idea of short content that was most often adopted previously, which was like clips or sketch or things like that. This is really a serialized content of 200, 300, 500 or 1,000 episodes, but that have been written as a whole. So it's very, organic in that sense. And might be one of the reasons why it works. Anyway, I come back to the recommendation part. I think that, as you were saying, a key point would be public policy and even Pan-African type of policy. I'm aware that the African Union has put together a fund, but it's not that offers loans for African creative industries. It might be a support, but there would be the need of proper cultural policies in that sense to encourage more of what we might call media sovereignty in the continent on issues of distribution, and mainly distribution, I would say, because through distribution you have monetization, and that would help further production. So again, policy making would be a key point.
Right. Thank you, Alessandro. Oswald, I'm sorry, we're only going to give you 1 minute. Our time is up. You have anything to add, Oswald? 1 minute.
Adams, you can come in on the issue of how much traction Viusasa has in Kenya, please.
Yes, please. So the real issue with this platform is that it is started, first of all, as a strategy for a specific media house to compete with the international media players. And so this media house already existed, and it had its own customer base, which it felt, because it could not monetize the digital decoders, which were outsourced to foreign companies, then it had to find a way to also connect with these customers in a way that provides it with some profit. And I think Viusasa came in first of all as a kind of commercial decision. However, it also has this appeal to local content, because what it provides is some kind of content that is not available on the mainstream digital companies such as Netflix. DSTV has also provided some platform for local content. So it looks for the content that resonates with its audiences the same way it did during the analog time. What we may say in this connection then is that the platform cannot be, spoken as if it is partly commercial, partly cultural. It is both, which is what it makes it to be the way it is. However, if you look online, you'll see that the same platform is offering different kinds of services, including shopping, selling telecommunication, mobile telecommunication, data, and also talk time and those kind of things. Shopping.
Sorry, Adams,
So,
we must stop now. We must stop. Our time is up. We have to be out of here.
all right,
Okay.
thanks.
Right. Now, we have another panel starting in a different room, so we can continue this conversation. It's the same, there's a second part to this panel, okay? So, any
In
questions?
15 minutes, right? Yeah.
In 15 minutes, yes. In 15 minutes.
Great.
So we'll
right.
continue our conversation there. Thank you all so very much for your presentations. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your presence. And see you all in 15 minutes.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your question. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.